All right, then let's continue on to part 2 in here. And they say what they did in part 1. Now, there's about 3 things they're going to do in this lesson. First, they're going to come in and they're going to create the database connection file, which should literally take us a minute or two to do. Then they're going to come in and they're going to work on, I don't remember which one they do first. They either do the controller and then the model, or else the model then the controller. All right. And we are going to go through this, but I'm going to break away then, and we're going to look at why they're doing it, at least why I think he's doing it the way he's doing it. So these will be the 5 endpoints we'll have. So the slash book, for example, slash to get a listing of all the books, the slash book slash colon ID, all right, with a question mark after it, to get just a certain book, the post with a slash book to create a new book, the put with a slash book with the ID to update, and the delete with a slash book with the ID. So that's what we're going to be getting into in just a moment. All right, now they say next to set up the database. Our database is already set up, but I do want to mention to you, if you look here, I could have used his database, but ours was, I thought, better. Maybe you disagree. All right, but this, he's only got one table, and there it is. So he's got a book ID, a title, a year, and an author. There's absolutely nothing wrong with what he did. But on the other hand, we have these fields here. The reason I'm telling you that is when a little bit later, when we're starting to create the model and we're going through the stuff and you want to do the create, this is what you have to put in, not what he has. All right, and we'll come back to that in just a bit. All right. So he says after you finish that, your structure should basically look like this. Okay, so the next thing is the database configuration file. Now, I'm going to leave this up here. I'm going to let you put this in, but before we do, again, I already mentioned this, but I'm saying it again. Don't use the word var. Use const in there. Now, and I want to explain this before you start typing it in. And that is, this file needs that same connection to MySQL. All right? It's not, once you put it into server.js, it's not global. It's not that everybody can use it. No. And this will be our connection. Now, you can call it connection if you want. Usually you see it called just like DB for database. So I'm just going to call mine DB, but you can call it connection if you want to do that. Now, the other thing too is if you look here, they're doing it different than we did it the other day. We use the create connection, which works. It's not a problem. Here they're using create pool. And I think at least he's doing this with the understanding that typically you only get so many connections that you can have open at one time. And usually it's about 10. All right. With a pool, it does a better job of managing it. We could use create connection here. We could use create pool here. Either one would work just fine. I'm going to just use what he has. And again, if you look in here, our database, I don't think we call the database, ours is books. So I just want to make sure that you all realize what should be changed in here. All right, so in other words, const, nothing else there, const, call it connection if you want to. I'm calling mine DB because it's less typing. And that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. But for the database name, put in books. Does all that make sense? All right, and after you get done, I'll put mine in. And we'll also go over what line 14 means. If you call yours DB here like I'm going to, then call it DB here. If you call it DB here, call it DB there. If you use what he did and you use connection, then call it connection. Well, either is fine. So again, this stuff should go into your DB connection file. And I'm going to bring mine up right now. And I've already copied it, so there's mine. All right. And technically, at least, line 5 is not required in there. Since there is no password, you really don't have to put it in. And again, I think we talked about this before. If this was a real installation, the host would be different. It would be a server out there someplace. The user certainly wouldn't be root. Root is all powerful. It really is. It can create, remove anything. And you'd have a password. All right? So, any questions on this file? Just going to continue on. So they explain it in here. All right, I'm not going to read any of it, but you can look at it. All right, so the next thing to do is to come in, and what they do next is they do the book model file. As it says, we'll create the functions that can communicate with the database layer. All right, now it says if you're familiar with SQL, you should find the queries below self-explanatory. Queries, yes. Some of the code that's there, probably not. So let me move this up. And let me show you again a couple things. Again, I know I sound like a broken record. Make sure you say const there, okay? And this is one of the reasons I use DB. All right. So we got it in there. Var book equals, if you want book, that's fine. Everything that's in here should be okay as far as to get all books. I think with ours, we're using the titles, right? So it'll be the title ID here, okay? And this will be the title ID, this will be the title ID, and this will be the title ID. Does all that make sense? All right, and down here, this is going to change also. So I don't know if it'll help or hurt, but I'm going to quickly put mine in. All right, so if that helps for you to look at what I did, great. And if it doesn't, I'm not trying to confuse you. So. And again, I'm going to be using arrow functions in here as opposed to what they're using. And I do agree with what he said as far as hopefully at least the queries make sense as far as what he's doing here. Titles. Okay, so that's the first one. I want to do that. I think I'm going to leave it right there for now. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to see if I can split my screen here. I can do it like this, so give me a second here. All right. So I want to be able to show you his and what I've done as well here. So it's not going to move over. Okay. All right. So the first line that's in here, let me do it like this. Put it right underneath. This is telling us that we want to be able to go over to the DB connection file. Notice it says .. because we've got to go up one layer, so to speak, from where we are. Okay. So, and we're going to be using that DB connection file. All right. And then we are creating, and that's not spelled right, is it? Okay. So here we're creating a constant that we're calling book. And this is going to basically hold the 5 operations that we want to run here. All right. So the first one is getting all books. Select star from titles, order by, title ID in descending order. We don't need it in descending order. Is that what they did here? Yeah, they did. So that'll give us, actually, what that'll do is that'll give us the newest title first. Does that make sense to everyone? All right. If you wanted to, you could just leave that off, but I suppose if you've got thousands of books, you probably would want to see your newest first. Now, what's probably the most confusing part about this is this right here and this. All right. There's nothing special about the word callback, except that this is a callback function. What we are telling the system to do is when we put in just a minute, the URL that's going to call this routine right here, that what it should do is it should run this query. All right. But not basically give us back the information until it's run the query and it has the information to give back to us. I don't know if that makes sense or not. That wasn't the greatest explanation of a callback. But this should give us all the books. Select star from titles, order by title ID, descending order. This next one is designed to give us, as you can see there, a single title. So rather than get all books, it's get book by ID. Now, notice in here, we have to pass in the ID because that'll be the book, the title of the book that we want to see. And now notice how the query is changed. Select star from titles where now the title ID, which is the name of it in here, I showed you that before, whoops, it's that name right there. That's the name that we put in. So where that title ID is equal to the ID here that we're passing in. Does that make sense? All right. Then we've got delete book. So again, we're passing in an ID and we're telling it to delete from our titles table where the title ID is equal to the ID we just passed in. All right. These are the, for lack of better words, you could say these are the routines that are doing the grunt work kind of behind the scenes. All right. And then finally, we've got update. And notice update's a little different. It needs the entire, and that should be book, I'm sorry. I called mine title originally, but I want it to be what his is. So ID, book, callback. What this is, the reason that you need to pass this in is it needs to know what fields are in there as far as what to update. All right, and I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense. This book that you see right here, this thing, is, for lack of better words, is this. It's going to be all of that information about that book. That's why I believe you need this. And when you look, it's update titles, set question mark. That question mark that's right there, that question mark that you see right here, that's this. All right, you want to set it where the ID that you passed in was this one. So you want to update the ID that you just passed in. All right, I don't think there's any mistakes on anything I keyed in here. If anybody sees anything that looks wrong, please say something. All right, let's put in the last one and then we'll go back and take a look at everything that's in here. All right, so this last one is going to have to, again, be a little bit different because this one is create new, and I'll call it what he does. So create new book. And again, we're going to pass in a book object and the callback. And now I'm going to again say const book. Notice it's a little b equal. We're about to create a JSON object. Hopefully that makes sense to you. The title will be book.title. And well, I should grab everything that's in here. All right. We don't have to put in the ID. Remember we changed that? All right. We purposely changed that. So I'm just going to grab each one of these. And I'm going to throw it, whoops, not in there. I'm going to put it in here. So it's going to look funky for a minute, but we'll fix it in just a second. So let me get rid of that. Just put in all this. Now I'm looking here. Why does this look funky? Hold on a second. ISBN, because I'm looking. Shouldn't a thing called titles have a title in it? And I'm looking, and does it have a title in it? Did I screw up? I want to make sure I didn't, because I am tired of giving you guys things and saying, geez, I didn't mean to do that. I want it to be right to begin with. So let's look. So I'm going to come here. Yeah, there's title, title ID, ISBN, title. Did I leave the word title off? Title ID, I put title ID in there twice. That's the problem. That's the title. Okay. So we've got title ID, that's our primary key. We're not putting that in. We've got ISBN, now we've got title. Then we've got edition number, copyright, publisher ID, and price. Those are all correct. All right, so let me bring this back up. All right, so the ISBN, I'm just going to tab all this over so you can read everything, is going to be book.isbn. The title then will be book.title. The edition number will be book.edition number. The copyright will be book.copyright. The publisher ID will be book.publisher ID. Finally, the price will be book.price. All right, now that should be everything. Now, before we do, so that's all that should be correct. We need to end this curly brace that's right here on line 20. So I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to put that in. So that ends that. And now I have to actually run this. In other words, say return db.query, and this will be insert into book set question mark, and that'll be book callback all right, and that will end this. And then finally I need one more line in here, which is, let's see, that ends that, ends that. Module.exports equal book. Don't worry, it'll show up in a second. Control A, Control A, Control C. Now let's see if I can copy that whole thing in. To this file right here, to my book model. Okay. Use that. All right. Now it's giving me some errors. We'll fix these in just a second, but I want to see everything. See book. Okay, that's all okay. Callback doesn't like something in here. It's the arrow function. Okay, that fixed that. Didn't put a colon here, or here, or here. fix all those now. I may have one too many curly braces in here according to this. So we're going to fix that, and then we'll be done with this one. So taking it from the top, this allows us to grab the information that's in our DB connection file. When you use require like this and you give it a path, you don't put the .js in there. All right. In fact, I think it gives you an error if you do put the .js in there. All right. Now we are creating a book object that is going to hold all 5 of our queries. All right. All 5 of our different methods. So we've got here get all books, which is going to return the query select star from titles, order by title ID in descending order. You've got get book ID, by ID rather, which does the same thing but only returns a single book. And just so you know, if you look here, this is its name in the database. This is the name we passed in. See that? Same kind of thing here with the delete book. This is the name that we're passing in. This is the actual title ID that we want to remove. All right, so that's its name in the database, and the same with the update. All right, and then we've got our create here. Like I said, I'll fix this in just a second. So book callback. So this is our book object, which is going to be the ISBN and the title and the edition number and the copyright and the publisher ID and the price. And then we're telling it to insert that. And then this exports it. Now, what does that mean? All right. We did an export in here as well, if you remember. When in our models thing, we did, not our models, in our, one of the other files that we did. I don't remember which one. But we did something where we did an export. What you are doing when you are doing this export is you are making this file will now be available to other files in the program. All right. And the idea behind that is rather than putting everything in one huge file, you're breaking it up into smaller files. And then you are making those smaller files available to other files in the program. All right. Let's see if I can just quickly figure out why I'm still getting this error here, because you can already tell what it is. Probably either that should be removed or that should be removed. I'm guessing it's that one. All right, nope. So let's see. Okay, no parenthesis there. All right, so that should be correct now. And I'll take it from the top in case anybody wants to see it. All right. So that should allow us to perform all the CRUD operations. Again, in no way is it mandatory that you put these keywords in uppercase. Okay, they did not in his document. So you do it whatever way you want to do it. Again, all I ask is that you try to be consistent with it. So let me move this down to the second half. So there's the other part of it. I believe that everything that's in there is correct. All right, when we start working with it, we'll know real fast whether or not it is. I'm going to save because I haven't saved in a while. Good news is it didn't find anything here that made it stop, so that's good. Now, if you need a better explanation than the one you think I just gave you, all right, this is his whole explanation. In the code snippet above, we created a book module that helps us to manipulate the content of our database. Well, that's kind of what I said, really. So now we've got our book model. Now we need to connect the model to the controller. So I'm going to stop for just a second and wanted to go through a couple of these things that are in here. Not all of them, because I got tons of stuff, a lot more than we need. But I'm going to start with this. This is very short. You don't have this. Don't worry, it's 2 pages long. It's not a big thing. So let me open this up. All right. So what exactly is the model view controller pattern? All right. So let's just take it the way that he's got it right here. First thing you have is the model. Basically, it's the database. All right. It's the logic that's going to run the database. Depending on how you write it, you might have the entire database itself in there, depending on the language you're using, etc. Next is the view. That's what the outside world sees. So it's the HTML, etc., the stuff that we would normally put in there. Now, the thing about the model and the view is if you write this the way you're supposed to, they never directly communicate with one another. The model and the view communicate indirectly through the controller. So the controller in many ways is like the supervisor. And with the model, it says it holds the application's data structure. It holds and manages the data in logic. Because of this, it knows what the application can or can't do. The model can be unbelievably complex. All right, and there can be more than one model. So when a request comes in, the controller's got to figure out where it should go. All right, so it's got to pass it off to the appropriate model. The model does its thing and sends information back to the controller. The controller now says, okay, I've got this information. It sends it to the view, so the view can basically format it as HTML and send it back to the user. That's how the whole thing works. And I don't know if I made that easy to understand or hard to understand, but that's what it is. All right. Do you have to build things like this? The answer is heck no, you don't. But that's usually the way that people build these. So let me show you this, because this will show it to you in a picture. So what is the MVC? Because that showed you with words. This one shows you with pictures. So again, read this if you'd like. Model view controller is not just used in Node. I used to teach a class in ASP.NET. We used MVC in there. You can use MVC in virtually any kind of programming language. All right. So, again, when you look at how the entire thing is going to work, you're sitting at a terminal. You request something. That request is going to go off to a controller. That controller will figure out which model it should call. That model will do its thing and send information back to the controller. Don't worry about these dashed lines. All right. And then the controller will format it, send it back to the view, which will send it back to the user. And that's what they're saying in here. So this is just more of the same. Again, model represents the database models. All right. View represents the pages or information that will be rendered by the routes. And the controller is the logic that puts the whole thing together. All right. Now, that was real. I'm not saying that was real simple, but that was real generic. All right. So this one I should send you, so I will, but I didn't yet. And it's under English.io. It's right here. This is a little bit longer, but it's how to create a Node.js backend using the MVC design pattern. The good news is it's all stuff you know now, or at least you've heard. Make sure you got these packages. Well, we looked at that stuff. And then there's the model, there's the view, there's the controller. All right. So they walk you through how you can set this up. So why didn't I just give you this? Because they don't do it exactly the same way that this author of this 3-part series we're looking at did it. Again, remember I said that this is an unopinionated system, meaning you can do it in a lot of different ways. All right. My hope is between today and tomorrow, all right, we're going to get to the point in here where ideally we're going to get this working. And then what I'd like to have us do is to create 2 more models and 2 more controllers. We'll have a titles model and a titles controller, but I'd like there to be a publisher's model and a publisher's controller, and also have there be, what was the other one? We got titles, we got publishers, and authors. Does that make sense? All right. And if we can get to that point by tomorrow, then I'm going to give you at least 1 day to sit and try to implement that yourselves. All right. So Wednesday would be a lab, and if necessary, Thursday would be a lab. And then come Friday, we're going to switch gears at least a little bit. And because that's it, it's going to be it for MySQL. You're not going to get tested on it. You're just going to have to finish that assignment. All right. Then we're going to jump into a NoSQL database, Mongodb. Start that on Friday. We're going to build an entire project with that. Probably it'll be like a personal blog type of thing. All right. And what we'll do is we'll have at least a couple tables, because we'll need a table of users, we'll need a table of blogs, etc. All right. And you'll start to see the difference between it. We could do that whole thing in MySQL, and that was what I was going to do originally. All right. I didn't think this would take as long as it did, but it has. All right. So it says we'll now register the functions in the book model with the routes in the book controller. So again, the book controller is going to basically be in charge, for lack of better words. Now, look on the screen here, because you can put in these 3 things, except, again, you'll want to put in the word const instead of the word var. But let's look at these before you even type them in. It's only 3 lines. Just like we did before, you'll want to say const express equal require express. In other words, the controller, to do its thing, will need express. That's number 1. Number 2, notice const var. Well, before we used app. Yeah. all of the things that we've done before, whenever we've created something, it's been app.get or app.post or app. etc. When you use router, you say router dot. So it'll be a little bit router dot get, router dot post, etc. This will make all the information in our book model available to our program. So in other words, the 3 lines of code that we want to put in at the beginning into our book controller will be const express equal require express const router equal express dot router and const book equal require again. That is supposing that you used, and I think I did, the same names that he did in here. All right, so those will be the first 3 lines that you're going to end up putting into your, whatever we call that, book controller or whatever it was. So I'm going to grab those, copy them to the clipboard, come back to here, find my file under my controllers. There's my book controller. There's nothing in there. Now there is. Now you'll know, usually if you screw something up, not only that, notice, I think that this will, let's see. See that? The IntelliSense will kick in. All right. So I know now that I want to go to models. So I can just hit tab and then go here, and there's book model. So I could tell if I screwed up, for lack of better words. All right, because I'd be getting errors in here, and I'm not getting any errors right now. All right. And again, this is not grayed out express right here because we're using it right here. All right. So let's go on and just take a look at what he's got here. So, as he says, first we import the Express.js framework. Then we create this router object. Notice as it says, it acts as middleware, and middleware is just that. It sits between point A and point B and allows them to communicate with one another. All right. It's going to end up routing the calls based on the endpoints that we put in. How is it going to do that? It's going to call what we just put into the book model just a couple minutes ago based on what we add as an endpoint or an address in there. So it says, let's now define those endpoints. So we've got to do 5 things, right? So here will be the insert. Here will be the, so that'll be the insert. All right. To create a new item, or a new title, whatever you want to say. This will grab all titles. This will grab a single title. This will allow us to update a single title. And this will allow us to delete a single title. Does that all make sense? All right. So, taking it from the top. What's got to change in here? Hopefully not much, except, again, we're going to take this and make it into an arrow function. All right. I think you can use just about everything else that's in here. But let's talk about it first and about what all this means. All right. Again, this will be a post request, which means you're going to be doing an insert. All right. And book.create new book. All right. This can either return an error if it doesn't work, or a result if it does work. This whole first part in this if is going to handle the error condition. There's 2 different types of errors. If you look in here, the first type, er_dupe_entry, means that you're trying to enter something, all right, with a title that already exists. Okay? And if you get this right here, that's one error, and if it's not that, but it's another, any other kind of error, we're just calling it that. So it's a generic error. If it gets down to here, it should have worked. And that should mean your affected rows should be 1, because we've just tried to add 1 record. 1 will be greater than 0, so we should send back a message that says book successfully added. And when you look at all 3 of these res.sends, all 3 of them say error, colon, and either true or false. If error is true, it didn't work. You can, I don't know why you didn't put a space there, but you can put a space there. All right. Here, if it worked, the error is equal to false. So again, error right here, that's going to handle that error. Result, that's going to handle the result. Does that make at least a little bit of sense? All right. So I'll leave that up there for a second, and I'll put it in myself. But again, the only thing you should have to change in here, just to show you this. So that'll mean in line 1, or line 44. All right, so that one will have to change, and so will line 46. And basically, it's the same kind of change. All right, I believe that everything else that's in here will work just fine. I think if you make those 2 changes that are shown there. And I'll do the same in just a couple of minutes when hopefully you're all caught up. Also, if you notice here in line 44, they've got the word next, and I didn't put that in. All right. If you write your own middleware, and we're not doing that here, if you need to force something to happen, you put in next. Because if you don't put in a next, and then you literally call it at the end. See how they're not calling next in here? You would say next paren. And that will literally say, okay, whatever I was working with, I'm done now. We don't have to do that. You could put it in, but it's not doing anything. It's 2:24. If by around 3:15 or so we can get all 5 of these routes done, we'll leave it there for today. We'll go through the last part of this tomorrow. I looked for this guy's code online, couldn't find it. I found his GitHub repository, but he didn't have this one in there, because otherwise I would have given you the code, because it would have been a lot less typing, plus we would have known whether or not it worked. Is that where it's giving you the error? Is in that file?
I believe so. Yeah, that's why I checked. It's one of the two.
Well, why don't you go back to the error message? It says it's at server.js at line 9. No, I mean, that's what it's finding it. It doesn't necessarily mean that's the. Let me quickly look at mine here. Looking for something that I have that you don't have. Mine is not blown up. Press. Where is that? Oh. See anything that looks wrong on there?
Oh, now it's running.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, I didn't do anything. All right. Now, I'll tell you what, if you look up on, if everybody just for a second would look up on the screen, please. Hopefully you've gotten a chance to put this one in. I'm going to put mine in here in just a second. We go to the next one here. This is get all books. Start thinking about what you have to change. You want to change this to an arrow function, which means you'll get rid of the word function. You don't need the comma next in either one of these. And here you'll put an equal greater than sign. Other than that, everything in here should be fine. All right. Then when we go to this one, same kind of thing. All right. You don't make that into an arrow function. You don't need the comma next. Make that into an arrow function. Okay. And everything else there should be fine. And then our update, same thing. Make that an arrow function. You don't need the comma next. Make that an arrow function right here. And everything else should be okay. And for the delete, again, make that an arrow function. You don't need the comma next. Make that an arrow function, and everything else should be done then. So I'm going to let you do that. I'm going to be doing the same thing. All right. And I'm just going to be keying the stuff in. And like I said, if we get there by around 3 o'clock or so, then that's going to be it for the day. The rest of the period will just be a lab, okay? And we'll try to see if we get this to work first thing tomorrow. And I'll tell you what, when you get done, when you get to this point today, make sure you do a file save, and do a save all if you have to, so check all your files, make sure they're saved. But then after you've done that, I'm going to just open up another window, and we really should push this thing. So in other words, I'm just going to do another git bash here, and I'm going to do a git add dot, and then a git commit -m, I'll just say initial commit, all right, and then our git push, I forget what that one is, but I think
Oh yeah.
origin, whoops,
I might need some help before I do that.
that's fine, origin master. Now, if I go to mine, no, you don't have to do it. I mean, I would like you to try to do it by the end of the period, is what I'm saying. But if I go to mine out here, let's see. And I go to the repository I was working with. Where's that one? I think that was BIMS, right? So why isn't it showing? I don't know. and I refresh, my stuff is in there. So if you had problems with yours and you want to just copy mine, that's totally fine. All right. But I will tell you this, I haven't tested mine yet. So that's what tomorrow is about. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to test this tomorrow morning. And if I find any errors, I'll fix them and repush it. Does that make sense? But mine is not showing any errors, so I don't know if you've got errors, Christopher, I'll be glad to look at
I
them.
just have just one error, but I'm not
Okay.
really. It's actually the first one, we went over the others.
Okay. Did you get yours? Your errors are all gone then, right?
My areas are not except for the page we just typed in. For some reason, it says I'm missing curly brace somewhere, and then curly brace. So I'm looking for that.
You know, people used to laugh because I would put a comment after every beginning and ending curly, and I'd map them up. You know, and after a while, you know, you got to come up with your own way of doing it, I guess. But to some people, that makes a lot of sense. To some people, that makes no sense.
This is for this one, the question is license declaration or statement. Like, probably should move this over.
That will do anything as far as.
Well, I mean, just the formatting.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll move one, two.
Yeah.
But if I remove one of them, gives me another error.
Well, and what's that one? I don't know. I'm just asking.
So that it should be for the self statement.
Well, let's look. I mean, this if you don't have an ending into this right here. See that? Before your else?
Before you,
No, before the word else.
before the word.
Put an ending curly right there. And get space.
Oh. Oh. All right. Well, I guess that fixed it.
Well, it's still giving you yours. Try to
Oh,
run it
okay,
again.
okay. I see it now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Try to
remember.
run it again and see if it runs now. Okay, well, I'll just go up to the top. No, go up to the top here. And no, I'm sorry. Since the last time you ran it there, I'll go down. Now it says there, router is not defined. See that? All right, go up to the top of that file.
I don't know.
You need that const.
This right there.
You know, you combine two lines there. Okay, go to line 1 that you've got right there.
Yes.
Okay, change that to const. Change that to the word express. Lowercase, all lowercase.
Yeah.
Okay, and then hit enter after you get to the end of that line. No,
The very end of
at
it.
the end of the line, yeah. Now put const space router, all lowercase, space equals space express dot router with a capital R, with a capital R. Paren. Save it. And go back to the bottom. Now it's running.
That's running.
Yeah, that's all.
All right, cool. I remember putting that in. I don't know if maybe I put it.
Sometimes it appears almost as if the editor does weird things trying to help you. It's, you know, I don't know if there's a way to turn off. It's like there's almost like there's a help feature or something on there
I'm
that.
looking in. We're looking in server.js right now. I don't know why there's a const, like capital letter starting router in curly brackets equal the following.
Yeah, I don't either.
That must be it. That one I think. So, this wouldn't happen.